I don't connect with that. I often hear people when they're referring to a musical artist, and if you've been following me lately on my channel, you'll have noticed that my attention has been very much drawn to issues connected with music lately. You often hear people say things like, their music doesn't connect with me, or maybe the other way around, I don't connect with their music, or they don't speak to my experience, or I'm not their target audience. With a few obvious exceptions, I struggle to understand that response to music. I'd also say similar things about literature, cinema, and TV, but I'll focus mainly on music here today. I said with some obvious exceptions, and I would point to, in my own case anyway, say children's music. I just don't identify at all with children's music. There are also, of course, types of music that just don't appeal to me. Opera, jazz, most hip hop, maybe country music too. Although that's been growing on me a little bit lately because of more exposure to it. There's been quite a lot of country or country adjacent songs on the top 50 recently. But the reason this music doesn't appeal to me particularly is because of the music itself. It's not because of the lyrical content of the music, for example. I just don't like this style of music, and I wouldn't regardless of the lyrical content. And apart from possibly hip hop, I wouldn't associate this music or these genres of music with any particular generation. But I'm thinking instead of, say, a song about young people in love. You may have noticed that I'm not a young person. Okay, you don't have to be rude about it. Nor do I happen to be in love at this time in my life. I'm not going through a relationship breakup. But I can enjoy a song about young people being in love. I can identify with a breakup song. It doesn't have to reflect my current experience in order for it to connect with me as a song. I don't have to have experienced a similar thing at all, any time in my life. I can connect with it musically, rhythmically, and so on. But even more than that, I can still connect with it lyrically. I could say the same if it was about someone, I don't know, dying from cancer, say, or someone spending time in prison or getting lost in a world of drugs. I don't have to have experienced those things myself or even had someone close to me who's experienced these things in order to be able to connect with the song about these things. Songs don't have to reflect my personal experience or my lifestyle or the experience of my generation for me to be able to connect with it. So I often have trouble understanding why, say, an older person like me will say that the work of a young musical artist today doesn't speak to them or reflect their concerns or whatever it may be. Why would I not be able to connect with the experiences of someone younger than me, or older than me, or of a different gender, or of a different sexual orientation? Does my being an older, straight, white man mean that I can only connect with music produced by older, straight, white men? Does an artist have to be addressing my concerns, my issues, in order for me to connect with them? This seems completely ridiculous to me. I think this attitude reflects a couple of things about society today, and maybe it's always been true. The two things that matter here, I think, are one, compartmentalizing, and two, tribalism. We always like to put things and people and experiences and so on into appropriate boxes. I can understand this tendency. It's quite useful at times. It's useful in science, as for instance when we gather organisms together into groups, species, gender, family, and so on. We're identifying common characteristics that make this a group of things rather than just a random collection of individual, completely different things. And we do this with people too. We put them into boxes labeled gender, or generation, or race, or colour, or sexual preference. Of course, the problem with this, when we apply it to people, is that we tend to think that people in these boxes will all be the same, that they'll believe the same things, behave in the same way, have the same values, and so on. Marketing strategies kind of depend on this. And because it's not actually quite true, they try to actually create and shape these groups so that it becomes true. But this means that we don't see the actual people, but just their type. Maybe this doesn't matter when we're classifying the different species of jellyfish, but it matters when we're classifying people. So people look at me, a 67-year-old white male with a British background, and probably assume that my favourite band is either the Beatles or the Rolling Stones. They'll assume that I like certain sports, certain books, certain movies. Marketing targets me based on this. Although, particularly when it comes to music, I work very hard to screw up the algorithm. Algorithms are the way in which we've automated this process of compartmentalization. These algorithms try to make us live within a particular bubble. Closely related to this is the idea of tribalism. Historically, we are indeed a tribal species. Belonging to a group has been essential to our survival and our evolution as a species. And we still carry this with us in our genes. So, these days I might belong to a tribe that loves hip-hop or heavy metal or jazz. This can become a community, a tribe to which we belong. We can become part of a tribe that follows a particular musical artist. What this does, in a way that compartmentalization alone doesn't do, is that it introduces an element of loyalty into the mix. We owe allegiance to the group, and straying from the norms of the group comes with the threat of being ostracized. A heavy metal fan, known as such, risks being ousted from the group if he shows too much interest in country music or the Spice Girls. These things act to varying degrees on various people, but there is a tendency to stick with what you know, or there's pressure to do so. You may be criticised by your in-group if you stray too far from the norms of that group, but you may also be criticised by another group if you stray too far into their territory. What do you know about Sabrina Carpenter, old man? But isn't this precisely what we need? Don't we need to explore each other's groups, their ideas, their values, their behaviours, their preferences? I think it's really cool when I see younger people discovering and appreciating the music of an earlier generation. Similarly, I love it when older people explore the music and culture of the current generation. Of course, there will always be things that I, as an older person, won't understand about contemporary culture, and also things that I won't try to and won't want to appropriate. The younger generation is entitled to its own culture. I get that they don't want old guys like me hanging out with them. I don't have a thorough grasp of contemporary online culture. I don't get all the modern lingo. I don't connect with today's gaming culture. But then again, I didn't connect with the gaming culture of my own younger days either. In very many ways, I have never connected with my generation. But music, like literature and cinema, is something that sheds light on what it means to be a human being. I'm not a teen in love. I'm not going through a relationship breakup. But I can understand the experience. I can appreciate the experience. I can even connect with a song precisely because it doesn't reflect my own experience. It enables me to connect with someone else's experience, as is the case also with literature and cinema. I can experience this vicariously. Or, to put it another way, I can experience their experience of it. And that is surely a good thing. The older generation always loves to criticise the younger generation of the day. And the younger generation will also criticise the older generations. Music is one way in which we can perhaps come to understand each other. This has always been relatively easy for me, unless maybe that's just a delusional belief I hold about myself. I'm not sure why it's easy. Sometimes I think it might be because I've never had a strong sense of belonging to any group, whether that be my generation, my gender, or any other compartment or tribe you'd like to assign me to. I sometimes think also that maybe it's because I actually don't have a strong sense of identity myself, so I find it relatively easy to identify with others. On the other hand, though, I sometimes think it might be because I do have a strong sense of identity and that it's strong enough not to be threatened by other groups, either by the people who belong to those groups or by the ideas that emerge from them. I'm not really sure which, if any, or all of these things are the case, and perhaps that's something that requires some further self examination on my part.